In this episode of Technology Frustrations and Gimmicks, we're going to go over how some people feel about answering their phone. Is there some dangers about answering your phone? Is call screening still a viable option? Can you get scammed by simply picking up your phone? How can you protect yourself if you get strange calls? We'll be answering these questions and others in this episode. Welcome to the episode of Technology Frustrations and Gimmicks, the show that educates the lost, the weary, and those that claim to know nothing about computers and technology. I'm your host and tech expert, Aaron Moss. So in this episode, we're going to be going over answering the phone. Now, that may seem like a really silly statement to say. Why would someone not pick up their phone? Well, there are lots of people who do not answer their phone under any circumstances. I know people myself. I'm sure some of you may know people that don't like to answer their phone. They have a phone, but when it rings, they simply don't answer it. Now, the reason why they don't answer it can be one of many reasons. Number one, they may feel that there's a bill collector. They get nothing but bill collector phone calls all day. Okay. The other is that they have this idea that somebody could be tracking you. To try to determine whether you're home or not. This is very common with perhaps women that are single, that live alone, and also the elderly. They may feel that someone is tracking them, so they don't want to answer the phone, kind of giving away whether they're home or not. And also there's telemarketers and other reasons why people don't answer their phone. But just off the bat, we can make some assertions about these calls. We could always file a cease and desist for the bill collectors. We could always use some sort of deterrent if we're worried about the security at our house. And if it's a telemarketer, we can simply just make sure that we're on a do not call list or find a way to get ourselves onto some sort of robocall blocker. There's a lot of those technologies going around about that. There's also a difference in the whole attitude towards telephones and phone calls. I was reading this article about millennials. So millennials right now in 2019 are usually, I believe they're in the 25 to 40 age range right now. So some of them have been in this article about millennials and phones. They say that phones are inefficient, they're disruptive, they're presumptuous, they're time-consuming, they're annoying, they're not private, not personal. Because there's so many different ways to communicate with people these days. The phone is just not something that a lot of the upcoming millennials and can we say Generation X or those that are in their teens, people that want to communicate, they want to do it privately, they want to do it conveniently, they don't want it to be obtrusive. Some of these things, like what it means is, like if you get a phone call and you're in a group of people, it's a little bit rude to get on the phone and be talking, holding another conversation when there's other people around you. But on the other hand, it's also rude to have your eyes down on your device while you're in a group of people as well. So I don't really understand all of that, in that perspective. But since I run a computer shop and a lot of the phone calls come in on my phone, it is kind of important for me to answer my phone every single time it rings. And I'm going to tell you why at the end of this call, at the end of this podcast, as to why sometimes it even pays off. So here is the truth when it comes to answering your phone calls. The telephone culture is disappearing. Just like we had mentioned with that article about the millennials, how they feel about it. Back in the day, when the phone rang, you would have one phone in the house. And when the phone rang, everybody in the house went running to the phone to catch the phone to see who it was. Okay? And depending on who it was, Would make you happy, would make you sad, but you're so glad that they called. Phone calls were something special. There came a time where star 69 was invented by a lot of the local phone companies. And what star 69 allows you to do that is if you had missed a phone call, you could pick up the receiver, dial star 69, and it would either call back the last person that called you or give you the phone number of the person who last called you. Until the caller ID started to come out and started to become more popular. I believe that when the caller ID came out, how people use the phone after that definitely changed. So now they can say, "Oh, I know who's calling" before I even pick up the phone. So now they can determine, what, I'm not going to talk to this person because it's going to be too time consuming, or they can say, "Okay, I don't know who is calling, therefore I'm going to let the machine get it, and then I'm going to decide whether I'm going to pick up the phone and talk to them or not." All because of caller ID. See, that caller ID is what made the difference. Now that has spilled over into cell phones today. So many of us will perhaps invest in a phone, but when we see someone calling from a phone number that we don't know, we may feel inclined to not pick it up. Okay, so some of the one of the I saw this funny video online maybe about 6 months ago. It was this video of this guy who was obviously a millennial, and he was talking in these vernaculars that only a millennial would say. And one of the things that he said was, "How dare they call me without texting me first?" And that sounds kind of weird. You almost have to, these days, because if you call somebody and they don't pick up, sometimes it's because they don't know that you're calling. We live in a society now where people have to now be expecting your call, not just calling. Okay? But here's something interesting. When early on when phones were first were invented, there was a culture, there was an etiquette that went along with making a phone call. You would call somebody. More than likely, the person who answered the phone may or may not be the person that you ultimately wanted to talk to. You would say, "Hello, my name is blank, and I would like to speak to so-and-so." Okay, that was the etiquette. That's what you said. And then they would find the person for you, hand them the phone, and then that person would say hello, and then your conversation would start. These days, people feel that if they're busy, that if the phone call is that important, that the person will just call back, okay, or they would leave a message and you would call them back when it is convenient for you. Because when they're calling, that may not be convenient for you. So a lot of this has to do with society and culture and how things are. We also mentioned that there's so many other ways of communication. We mentioned texting. There's email, social media. I was listening to this other podcast about how when 911 systems sometimes go down in local tragedies. Okay, sometimes the social media is still up. Okay, even though you can't call the cops, you can still find information through social media. Now, but when we compromise that with phone use, there are two technologies that have benefits, but they also have social drawbacks. Because we're living in a society of convenience and people really just don't want to be inconvenienced. But if it's an emergency, all bets are off. You can make phone calls in an emergency. But in order to know if it is in an emergency, you have to pick up your phone. And here's the thing. If somebody's calling you and their number is blocked or restricted, or it's a number that you don't know, that could be an emergency. You won't know unless you answer. Okay, and having them leave a message and for you waiting to listen to the message and for you to call them back may not be the best option in that circumstance. You may later find out about this, about how this played out. You may say to yourself, you know what? I should have answered my phone then. So that may not be the case for lots of people, and we're going to get into some of that. But here's the meat and potatoes of this question. Is it really dangerous to answer your phone? Now, it is possible to put yourself in danger by answering your phone, but I'm going to answer that question by saying not exactly. Is it dangerous to answer your phone? My answer is not exactly. You have to keep the phone in its place. It is a communication tool. Okay? You can put yourself in just the same amount of danger as talking to somebody face to face as you can over the phone, as you can texting, as you can with social media, one-way radio, any type of communication, and the phone is no different, has the potential for danger. But the danger is not in the method or the technology of the communication, but it is knowing who you are communicating with and what the intentions of that conversation are. Those are two critical things that can easily be lost when you change the type or the technology that you're communicating with somebody with. For example, a very unpleasant thing that we hope never happens to us is maybe a kidnapping. Okay, so just imagine. Let's say that you are a kidnapper. You're gonna want to find out, the comings and goings of the family that you're about to kidnap, and you would want to make phone calls to trick them into thinking that you're somebody else. Which, by the way, can very easily be done over the phone because it's just a voice. They don't see your face. Therefore, the identifying marks are not there. It's very difficult to track who you really are speaking to. So those are some of the things that you need to keep in mind when you're using these various technologies. And the same thing happens with social media. Okay, you want to know who, in fact, you are talking to. You can be on the phone and it'll say, hey, this is Chase Bank or this is Wells Fargo or Citibank calling to check up on your credit card. Okay? It can sound legit. The background can sound like a call center. But guess what? That could be a fake. Could be a fake call center with fake background noise, with a fake operator just calling from a cell phone. But there's also the technology of caller ID spoofing. And what that means is there are programs that you can get on your computer and apps that you can get on the phone where you can spoof your caller ID, make an outgoing call, and put any phone number on that phone call that you want to appear as the caller ID to the recipient. For example, when I was in the car rental business, I would always get two phone numbers. And I would always ask for their phone number and an emergency contact phone number. So in case our rental cars ever went missing, I could always, and if they tried to evade answering their phone, knowing that they see the 800 number that's calling, which is our real hotline number, I would have a spoof program where I would put their emergency contact as the caller ID and call their phone. And usually their caller ID, their emergency contact would actually be a friend, a close friend, a relative, a mother or father, sister, cousin, or something. And if they had that number programmed in their phone, when I called them, their phone would actually say their emergency contact's name. They would pick up the phone and I would get them. I say, aha, your phone is working. This is, car rental company. Hey, you got to bring the car back. We're gonna put you out for collection. So I feel that we were using that in a legitimate way, for business, but people can use it for very, very dangerous ways. They can put a caller ID on your phone, okay, hacking the phone system, and it looks like your mother, your father, your husband, wife, or child is calling you, when in actuality, it is somebody else. Okay? Now, this doesn't mean that this happens a lot. Call spoofing, the telemarketers use this. They can be calling someplace in India. They can be calling your local city using a local phone number that looks like it. But when you hang up the phone with them and you're back on the regular phone, and you call that phone number back that it looked like they called you from, you'll realize that it just goes to nowhere. It goes to a bad number, disconnected, or rings to some phone number and somebody picks up and has no idea what happened, who you are, why you're calling them back. You see, that's how some of these spoofers work. So although by itself just picking up the phone doesn't necessarily put you in danger, you want to be able to have a way to quickly identify and verify who you really are talking to. Okay, that is how some people have hacked this tool. And it is just a tool to communicate. It's the same thing like somebody talking to you face to face and having a very, very good mask. Almost like, almost like those masks from, what's that movie where they had all of the, all those good masks with Tom Cruise. I forget the name. I'm probably going to get it later. But they would have these masks. You think you're talking to one person, but they're actually just wearing the mask of somebody else. And that's exactly what could happen in phone calls. They can put this other caller ID with you. So that happens in the world of scammers. Sometimes it happens in bill collectors, and it most definitely happens with telemarketers. They always they have all these different ways of spoofing the caller ID. Caller ID is not a good measurement to determine who you really are speaking with. Some other ways to deal with some of these incidentals is you want to become familiar with the most popular scams. So someone claiming to be your bank may call you from your bank's phone number, claiming to be your bank, and they may want some verification information from you. Don't give it to them because they could be spoofing that number. You have to be familiar with some of these scams that are out there. There's a great TV show. It was a British TV show called The Real Hustle. And The Real Hustle, all the show is they show you all the different scams that have worked, okay, and some of the latest ones, some of the early ones. And they show you the scam, how it plays out. They actually perform the scam on real people, but they give their money back to the person and then ask them if they can show the footage to educate others on these scams. A lot of these scams involve technology. They involve computers. They involve your phones. So you want to be familiar with these scams. Like we said earlier, if you're worried about bill collectors, try to get on the cease and desist. So if you live in the United States and you have a debt collector that's calling you, the law does allow you to send them either verbally over the phone, or usually it's by letter to their official address. It's a legal letter. Usually a lawyer has to make it up, but it has like all of the information of the law dealing with practices of bill collecting. And they say that you request that they not call you by phone. But what that means is you have to make sure that you're that you're looking at your mail, that you're opening your mail, because they may be trying to tell you something, but they cannot call you to tell you. Okay? They could be out to, repossess your car or do something else, and they can send you letter after letter after letter, but they never call you. And then before you know it, your things are being repossessed and things because you've removed their ability for them to call you. So use the cease and desist option if you're worried about bill collectors calling you on the phone. And for telemarketers, there is a do not call list with the federal government. There is. I'm going to find out what the website is and post it in the notes of this podcast. But what it is so you can actually have your phone number added to the national do not call list, so that anytime a telemarketer calls you, or has a list of phone numbers, they have to cross-check that list with the do not call list. And if you are on the do not call list, they have to, by law, remove you from that list and not even call. If they do call you, they'll be breaking the law. And if they're breaking the law, hey, you might get some money from them instead of them getting money from you. The other reason why people don't like to answer their phone is they have this idea that people might be trying to keep tabs on them. Okay, trying to figure out when you're home, when you're not home. They might be trying to rob you. They might be trying to harm your family in some sort. So here are some of the best practices you can do. Number one, don't make enemies. I have a sales coach. He says, don't make any enemies where none exists. Okay, don't make a habit of going out into the world, finding ways to make people upset, make people angry with you. Okay, be a loving and gracious person. Okay, don't be the kind of person that somebody would want to try to take advantage of or try to take revenge from. Okay. The other thing is, if you don't want people to know whether you're home or not, as far as the phone goes, just have your phone forwarded to two phones. Both if you have a house phone, have it forwarded to both your cell phone and your house phone, or get rid of your house phone altogether. That way, if somebody's calling you and you answer your phone, you could be on your cell phone at home. You can be at your cell phone in the street, in your car, at work, at school. You can be anywhere. Okay, there's no way of knowing or tying your ability to answer your phone, if it's a cell phone. And for those that have a landline, they want to keep the landline, which, by the way, if you have a landline and you're getting a lot of telemarketing calls, you might want to invest in a cell phone, because it's the landlines that are the ones that kind of report to the library list and the call directories. Most of those are landlines. If you get yourself a cell phone, chances of you ending up on a call list without broadcasting it is very, very seldom. But a lot of people use their phone numbers for business. But if your phone number is listed as a business, telemarketers will find your business, load your phone number onto their system, and try to sell you business-related products. But that's only because you're putting your phone number out there. But if you have a cell phone and you only have that phone, cell phone companies do not report numbers out to the public arena for public records. So that's a little tip for you. Ways now, if you are concerned that you are being watched or someone's keeping tabs on you through electronics, always try to perhaps make your house look inhabited. Some ways that you can do that is maybe keeping a car in the driveway, keep a radio on, have timers on your lights. There's a lot of good security cameras out there. There's the Ring doorbell that I've heard nothing but good results about. There's your traditional camera systems. So there's lots of different ways you can defend and protect your home, and the pricings of these devices and of these technologies vary greatly, but ultimately the prices are coming down quite a bit. So if you think that you can't afford it, check into it again. Some of the things that we talked over would make a lot of people feel that answering their phone is not the best option. But here's what I want to caution you on. And I'm going to tell you this in the form of a story. I was at home one day, and at this time I did have a landline. I just got finished eating dinner, and the phone rang. I went over to the phone, and I said, hello. And it was a woman on the phone. She was very nice, and she asked me if I would be interested in taking a survey. I was about to just hang up the phone, but this time I just said, sure. I'm thinking to myself, all right, she just wants a survey. Fine, I'll answer some questions. So I take the survey, and the survey was about what kind of music I listen to. So I was answering their questions. They asked me what stations I listen to, why I like those stations, if there's something that could be improved in the station, things like that. So I answered those questions. The phone call was maybe 5 or 10 minutes. And at the end of the short survey, she asked me, would you be interested in taking in coming into a facility and listening to music and rate music for 2 hours, and you're going to be paid $30 an hour for a 2-hour session. And at the time I wasn't working. I said, yeah, sure. So that's what happened. So it was maybe about 3 weeks into the future, and I went to this. I went to the hotel, and there was a whole bunch of guys there that were my age and my genre of type of music and radio station type deals. And we sat and we listened to. They put us in this room. It had speakers in it, and each one of us had tables and chairs in there. We each had this device where we were supposed to rate the music on a scale of 1 to 5. And the speakers would be playing a different song every 8 seconds. And we were there for 2 hours. So just do the math. We listened to somewhere in the neighborhood of close to 600 songs. And they got a ton of data out of us. And I got paid $60 cash walking out of there. And it was only because I answered the phone. I made $60 just answering the phone. This was 100% legitimate. It was from a legitimate firm that actually does the radio station statistics, and they do all these measurements. It wasn't for TV, but it was just for radio. So this was a legitimate company. It was a legitimate thing. It was a cold call. It was a telemarketer, but it actually was something that I ended up benefiting from. The other experience that I have about answering my phone is it happened just less than 2 weeks ago. I was doing another podcast show called Tucson Tech Talk, which is on the Tucson Business Radio X network right here in Tucson. And I had some charter schools on the program I was interviewing. And one of them actually called me back less than 2 weeks ago. It was on a Tuesday morning, and he says, Aaron, I need you. Our system is down, school is starting, and nothing is working. The teachers can't print. They can't go online. Nothing is working. We need your help. Okay? I was there in less than an hour, and we signed a $6,000 a year deal with that guy, with that school. Okay? It was worth it for me to answer that phone call. Had I missed that phone call, he probably would have just called somebody else, and I would have been out that money. But you know what? That money was there, and I made it because I picked up my phone. So for all of you listening, whether or not it's dangerous to actually answer your phone, it really depends on your circumstances. So what I mean by that is you have to evaluate it under your own circumstances. Are you expecting calls? Are you in business? If you're definitely in business, you should be answering all of your phone calls. You have to see what a phone call is and then determine what you're going to do with that call afterward. You may have to maybe assert yourself as to how you're going to handle things. And if you're a little bit weak-hearted and you don't feel like hurting people's feelings, and if they call you and you don't want to talk to them, fine. These are learnable skills. These are things that you can get better at. But don't just not answer your phone because there could be an emergency like we talked about before. It could be a life-changing opportunity calling you, but you just weren't answering the phone. So I hope all of you learned something from this. It is something that I've noticed is something worth having a show about. If you have any questions about this, please feel free to leave a comment or message in our board. Technology Frustrations and Gimmicks is sponsored by Computer Doctor of Tucson. We work on all makes and models of computers up to 20 years old. We also have a rent and rent-to-own program on laptop, desktop systems for families, schools, and businesses with tech support included. If you are having any computer issues, call our office at 520-261-5508 or visit our website at computerdoctor.xyz. Until then, see you next time.